Let's explore some possible areas where vegans, especially those who value consistency more than their health, might not be as consistent as they think they are. Vegans tout the vegan diet is healthy and are more than happy to try to convince people to do it.
I think, because the American Dietetic Association, maybe you don't, but they're the largest organization of nutrition experts in the world, and they released a peer-reviewed statement in 2016 saying that a vegan diet is healthy for all stages of the life cycle, including infancy, pregnancy, adolescence, and athletes.
A nutritionally adequate plant-based diet, yes. If you're meeting your nutritional requirements, then there's no reason for you to be consuming or using any animals.
With respect to the position of the American Dietetic Association and the dietitians of Canada and the dietitians of Australia, who all say unequivocally that a vegan diet is healthy and appropriate for every stage of life.
You're not disagreeing with me, you're disagreeing with the largest collections of dietary experts the world has ever seen. That is both the American and the British Dietetic Association. Right. It's like, take it up with them. I think they might know a thing or two more about nutrition than you do, and certainly more than I do. And they've shown conclusively that a vegan diet is healthy at all stages of life, including pregnancy. So it's like, you'll want to take it up. You want to take it up with them.
No, also, if you want nutritional information, don't come to me. I'm telling you right now, don't come to me. Don't go to pretty much any vegan YouTuber unless they're a health professional. I'm talking about like having a medical doctor degree, at least a degree in nutrition and dietetics, which is like a multi-year program. That's who you want to get your nutrition information from. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist.
When you push back with the fact that it requires supplements to be able to maintain it, then all of a sudden it's, oh, I don't give nutritional advice. In what universe? I'm more than happy to sit here and say, oh my God, eating meat is so bad for you. Oh my God, saturated fat is so bad for you. Oh my God, cholesterol is so bad for you. You should be vegan. The vegan diet is so good for you. I've been vegan for such and such years and I've never needed to take any vitamins, but I don't give nutritional advice though. Unlike you meat eaters who keep trying to tell people that they will need supplements on a vegan diet. Okay, vegan. So, you're an ethical vegan. And you think humans and animals are of equal moral value. That's great.
But do all sentient beings have equal moral value? Or is there a hierarchy here?
No, all equal moral value.
There is not a hierarchy here.
No.
Why is it wrong to beat dogs and cats, or right to harm and eat cows, pigs, chicken, and fish? Why does such a moral distinction exist? Because we wouldn't respect people in Yuling for holding a dog and cat meat festival every year. They might say dogs and cats are their choice of protein. The only difference between a cow and a dog in the Western society is our perception.
Oh, what's that? Is that a cat in your house? Where the hell did that dog come from? So we're exploiting animals for entertainment and to fulfill social needs now? It doesn't matter if you're feeding them and providing them with shelter. They cannot agree to be used by you in this way. And something about perpetuating animals as victims of humans just trying to satisfy fleeting pleasures like taste. There are some vegans that rescue animals, and that becomes their excuse to kidnap them. If you found a toddler and you were able to nurse it back to health, it doesn't become yours to keep. Even if you can't return the toddler to its parents, even if it seems like the toddler wants to stay with you, it isn't capable of consenting to that the same as an animal isn't. So you have to release it to the proper authorities if you think they ought to be treated the same. Also, the kissing. Imagine touching or kissing a human of similar intelligence like this and assuming it's okay because they don't know what's happening and couldn't say no even if they did. Also, the whole trying to turn your pets into vegans.
So today I wanted to talk about how I feed my pets vegan.
Hey you guys, Erin and Dusty here at Eat Move Rest, and welcome back to our channel.
Yes.
So we've got another nutritious and delicious recipe for you guys today, but it's not technically for you guys. This one is for your fur babies.
First of all, the animal you bought and are keeping as your entertainment slave cannot be vegan. It's funny how much gatekeeping happens in regard to ex-vegans and people who are incidentally vegan. Some vegans are very strict with that label, and others happily place it on the innocent victims they are needlessly destroying from the inside out because veganism. Your child is not vegan, and neither is your dog. Something about reduction of suffering can be fit in here. We'll talk about that later, though. One of the main reasons why adhering to a keto carnivore approach appeals to me is because of how much less waste it produces.
I bought all of this, so not sponsored, but we're going to do a little taste test. They've got this, which is like a turkey feast. I think they brought this out just for Christmas.
See, I've actually got a lot of root here. I could definitely move those up there. Maybe I'll do that when we're done. Probably not. How many? 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 6 bottles of just egg, plus this one, which has been opened, so, it's fine.
My garbage used to be filled with plastics of all sorts. Now, it's just plastic from the meat trays packaging, egg cartons, and cheese packaging. Every time I eat these foods, though I recognize they're not the best quality, the nutrition I receive is certainly more complete than any I would ever receive from a plant food or from a processed food. And speaking of processed foods, what are the odds that the average vegan is maintaining a whole foods vegan diet? There's a huge drive for mock foods, and vegans will sometimes tout this as though it's a good thing. They will also say that meat eaters are being hypocrites because they'll say you can get everything you need from a cow, but there's the underlying assumption that that cow will not be the only thing they eat in the year. It goes both ways. In any case, we're comparing cow meat and the environmental impact an animal that is a natural part of the carbon cycle would have, and Impossible Burger, and all the needless destruction to the environment that is caused for the production of those. Also, I poop less, which means my body actually puts to good use what I put in it. It doesn't just speed run it through my digestive system only to tell me we're hungry again an hour later. I'm not driven to overconsume. And a vegan would definitely argue that overconsumption is a main problem in our modern world.
Yeah, well, it's an overconsumption issue, isn't it? And I think that whether it's foods, clothing, whatever it may be, we have an issue, broadly speaking, in society where we consume too much of most things, right?
But it's okay because I didn't actually eat the animal that died for these grains to be on my plate. Okay, vegan. Here is an area where vegans like to say meat eaters are hypocrites. We shun the vegan diet because it requires supplementation, all the while we eat beef from cows that are given supplements too.
Bacteria are the only ones that can make B12. Animals do not make B12. And guess what? If you are eating meat, you are in a sense likely supplementing, because 90% of the world's B12 supplements are now given to animals.
Here's the problem with this. There's a big difference between my diet would not have been possible a few hundred years ago because we didn't have the supplements we have today, and because we've been depleting the earth of nutrition for so long, we have to supplement cows in order to increase the amount of nutrition we can get out of them, or else keep them healthy enough before we slaughter them. What did we do before the supplements? Is it somehow somebody's idea that we were not getting it from other animal sources? If we didn't supplement them with B12 and we didn't have access to B12 vitamins, where did we get our B12? Do you think that maybe they are a natural source of B12, but because of our mistreatment of the earth and of the cows themselves, that would be the reason why we have to supplement them? Also, vegans don't seem to understand that everything they eat requires supplementation.
And the hard part with this is vitamin B12 is mostly found in our diets in animal products, and it's very hard to find them in plant-based products unless they're fortified.
Nutritional yeast is very nutritious. Nutritional yeast is a great source of protein, B vitamins, and trace minerals. Fortified nutritional yeast contains more B vitamins.
Which is fortified nutritional yeast. Fortified yeast is a deactivated type of yeast that is often used as seasoning or condiment.
Number 6. Fortified nutritional yeast. Fortified nutritional yeast is a rich source of protein, vitamins, and minerals the body requires.
With B12, yeah. That's what I was wondering. If it's not fortified with B12, is there some kind of like just natural bioavailable B12 and nutritional yeast? That's the question I want some scientific paper to answer.
It's not just the main things they can't get in their diet. Vitamin B12, vitamin K, vitamin D. It's the plants as well. If the soil is not as nutritious as it used to be, that means what grows from this soil is also less nutritious, and what consumes what grows from the soil will in turn be receiving less nutrition. Eating nose to tail, a well-fed cow that replenished the soil with its poop before slaughter versus the amount of hoops one has to jump through just to try to make a nutritionally complete plate on a vegan diet. Okay, vegan. One of the interesting things about online discourse in regard to veganism is how often a vegan or vegan supporter will mindlessly parrot some of the most trite talking points with nothing to back it up. And when you introduce an idea that contradicts or counteracts one of these talking points, all of a sudden supplying a source matters. If you try to supply a source, for example, a source saying that previous studies that say that saturated fat is bad for you were inconclusive, or subsequent studies that simply show that saturated fat's effect on the body as a cause of several modern diseases is inconclusive, all of a sudden it's pseudoscience. This is a conspiracy theory. You'll just believe anything.
Going for some kind of relativism here, saying, yeah, well, there's different ways of looking at things. Some people see a study and conclude it's good for vegan. Others conclude it's bad for vegan. What are you talking about? I know there's such a thing as the preponderance of evidence, and the preponderance of the scientific research shows clearly that eating a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, is healthy for you. Sure, there's some outlier studies and some well-funded studies by the meat and dairy industries that say something else, but then again, that's the minority. So just because there's some studies that say something opposite of what you believe doesn't mean we should just all throw our hands in the air and say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to believe anymore, man.
The amount of projection is hilarious. What is the idea here? Am I just supposed to take on what a vegan says as though it's fact? As though it's written in stone? I'm just supposed to blindly trust the science? Oh, except for when the science undermines veganism and the claims vegans like to make in any way. Then, all of a sudden, science is completely unreliable. It must be propaganda. All of a sudden, the meat eater doesn't understand how science works. Well, if there's something I understand very well, is that ideas are meant to be tested, they're meant to be replicated, and they're subject to revision. Science either matters or it doesn't, and in any case, if they can cherry pick, then so can we. It's not about your health. It's about the animals. It was never about your health. Think of the animals.
Then obviously we're going to defend the animals. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the animals I'm defending. And I would implore others to defend the animals too.
But what's the main overarching theme? It's about the animals and not exploiting animals as far as possible.
Because it's not about you anymore. It's about the whole goddamn world. It's about all of these animals that are being murdered for people's selfishness and greed.
Remember, veganism is not about food. It's about the animals and ending animal exploitation.
Veganism, at its core, seeks to shift suffering from animals to humans. It is not a movement to reduce suffering generally. If you try to say, I want to cause as little harm to sentient creatures as possible or practical, and yet you don't include humans in that sentient creatures box, what's that called? Speciesism, I think.
This brings me to the topic of speciesism. The word refers to the discrimination among species, which leads to the idea that someone is worth more than another, which is the root cause of all harmful isms, such as oppression, including racism.
For some reason, a human cannot be concerned with the reduction of their own suffering. In fact, there are some fellow humans who are willing to sacrifice you and your ability to thrive. And for what? So that a species whose lives they value more than humans can experience less suffering. If a human starts to suffer for being on the vegan diet, all of a sudden the reduction of suffering was never the point. The point was for them to stop causing suffering for animals and take on that suffering themselves. To keep it short and sweet, big meat and dairy are out to ruin the world, but somehow not big sugar, grain, and seed oil. A vegan can freely decide where their line is, but meat eaters are not given the same grace. If a vegan argues that they don't have to go so far as to yeet themselves to reduce the amount of suffering they cause, and some vegans would act as though it's a given that they would never have to go that far. It's not. It means that they're assuming that there's some inherent value to life and the ability to live it. They are also outright refusing another person's attempt at telling them where to set their bar. A common talking point you hear from vegans is not just surviving, but also thriving. For vegans, perhaps the idea of thriving is malnourishing yourself to the point where you require supplementation in order to not have your brain shrink.
These people are not care about you, they care about themselves, or they would be more cautious in their advice and not taking risks with your health. So here's a study that showed 1,000 women followed for 8 years, greater DHA omega-3 index at larger brain volumes. That means that when you had the index below 3.5, you had shrinkage of the brain. And brain shrinkage obviously causes dementia, and this adequacy is more important if lifespan is enhanced.
The study actually showed relatively normal levels of B12, which means but the lower the levels of B12, the more brain shrinkage. There was a 1-to-1 correlation that was very clear. And what it basically says is that, well, for one thing, we definitely need to be eating more animal products and not less, but also that the standards for what we are considering okay levels of B12 are set much too low. Yeah, much too low. Sure. And so that the need for B12 is extremely high for optimal brain functioning, and past a certain point, that damage may not be reversible.
If our diet is strictly vegan, there may be some nutrients like vitamin B12. Vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. We live indoors, and some people have a higher need for it than others, but then we should use a conservative amount and not push it too high. The EPA and DHA, particularly DHA, is the omega-3 fatty acid that varies considerably from person to person in the ability of the conversion enzymes to make the adequate levels. When we look at most of the studies on cognitive impairment or brain shrinkage with omega-3 index, they all seem to show similar evidence that levels below 5 does not lead to brain fullness and as much cognitive health as levels above 5. But when we see levels dropping below 4 on the omega-3 index, we see consistently across the board that we get what we see brain shrinkage and cognitive impairment.
They set the bar pretty low, but that's their problem. I don't get to set their bar for them, right? I set my bar at a reasonable height, that is, I assume thriving is facilitated through the consumption of one's natural diet. Therefore, it becomes unreasonable for me to be off the table. Next thing you know, a vegan chimes in trying to tell me where my bar ought to be set. So, are we able to set bars for each other, or... When you tell them to buzz off because personal choice, you will get pushback. Your personal choice involves the harming of others. Well, so does yours, genius. Except the difference is, the animals who died to feed me didn't die in vain. Speaking of a diet killing animals needlessly, what is it that vegans think is a moral obligation again? Basing basic actions that are required for your survival on morality is a potentially suicidal thing to do. Do you care about life or don't you? Is thriving important to you or is it not? In any case, I also find it hilarious that vegans consider themselves morally superior to other people. They know they do things they don't have to do, and in doing so, they cause suffering on others, and they insert a justification that they just pull out of their ass to say why it's okay for them to do it. Okay, so when I do the same thing, what's the problem exactly? If I exact my own moral standards and then meet or exceed those standards, and then sit there congratulating myself and patting myself on the back, how is that any different from what they're doing? Some would say it's because they're killing fewer animals. In what universe? And even if that were true, to what avail? I thought the idea was to avoid suffering. What percentage of people quit veganism because of health failure? Is health failure suffering? Does human suffering matter at all? If it doesn't matter that a human suffers and we're not interested in avoiding human suffering, why are you still here? What would be the justification for sustaining your life then? If your efforts cause just as much suffering or even more suffering, and you still feel you can take the moral high ground, yet you assume a meat eater causes just as much suffering or even more suffering and somehow they can't take the moral high ground, there's some next level hypocrisy going on here. I understand that being inconsistent is an unavoidable part of life. I don't place unnecessarily high standards on people because it's pointless. A vegan that goes through life minding their own business, only chiming in when it's pertinent or when asked, I would have nothing to say to. But the grandstanding and the insistent way some vegans wind up worming themselves into every corner of our lives, lobbing criticisms, and calling the kettle black while pretending that's not what's going on calls for a call out. Thank you for watching. Your comments are always welcome, and as always, be having a good day.